Bueno, ¿damos ingreso?
Sí, dale.
¿Cómo no? Bueno, buenas tardes.
¿Qué? Sí, sí. El origen, sí.
Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a esta última charla de la AFAM. Vamos a dar la presentación de nuestro disertante, que es el doctor Torsten Hoppe Tichy, que nació en Hannover, en Alemania, en 1959, está casado con 3 hijos. Él va a hacer su presentación en la charla, van a ver que es una persona muy agradable, y que accedió a esta última charla sobre farmacia hospitalaria a nivel internacional. El doctor hizo en 1979 su tesis doctoral sobre química farmacéutica, y asimismo en farmacia hospitalaria en el Hospital Universitario de Ulm. Es jefe de farmacia del Hospital Universitario de la ciudad de Heidelberg, también en Alemania, desde 1989. Y desde 1993 es presidente de la Asociación Alemana de Farmacia Hospitalaria, que se llama ADCA. Es también miembro honorario de dicha asociación y es profesor en la Escuela de Farmacia de la Universidad de Heidelberg en el área de farmacia clínica y de farmacoeconomía. También es especialista en farmacia clínica y en análisis farmacéuticos. Él nos va a contar un poquito, vamos a escuchar ahora la presentación y luego lo vamos a tener al disertante para que se le pueda hacer preguntas. Si ustedes desean, pueden ir escribiendo las preguntas por el chat. Él maneja el idioma inglés, si bien es alemán nativo, pero le podemos hacer preguntas en inglés o yo puedo ayudar a traducir lo que no se comprenda. Y bueno, si quieren, damos inicio entonces a la presentación de la charla para luego escucharlo al doctor. Gracias.
Dear colleagues in Argentina, first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to present a little bit about hospital pharmacy and clinical pharmacy in Germany and how our health system works and so on. You see over here something personal, and you see that I'm already some kind of an old guy who is telling you something about our system in Germany and a little bit about the European situation, being a person some kind of a few years before retirement. So the good news then is that I can perhaps explain something also in the discussion, which is some kind of historically grounded, and other things which have been invented also by me during my career of a hospital pharmacist, and also as a president of our German Hospital Pharmacists Association. So I was given some presentation tasks, and you see them on this slide. And from this slide, the following agenda was born. I tried to tell you something about the German health system with a focus on hospital pharmacy, but also on finances, some kind of. Then I will present you some slides on how to become a hospital pharmacist or a pharmacist at all, and on post-university specialization of pharmacists. Then taking my own hospital pharmacy at University Hospital Heidelberg, I will tell you something about the organization of a hospital pharmacy. And then after that, I will bring some slides on the future of hospital pharmacy in Germany. So, how is the German health system running? And I will focus a little bit on the hospital care. First of all, there was a question given to me about hospital ownership. And this is quite difficult, so to say, in Germany. We have various hospital owners. University hospitals are always owned by the federal states. So in our federal state of Baden-Württemberg, where I live and work, we have 4 university hospitals which are always connected to the School of Medicines. And in university hospitals, you have a special situation because there you have bedside hospital care, but those university hospitals are also responsible for research and university education of physicians. I will come back to this later when I show you the structure of School of Pharmacy teaching at universities. Other hospitals can be owned by cities or counties, can be owned by the churches, by private hospital chains, which is now the majority of owners in the system. We also have 2 or 3 army hospitals, and also the Red Cross is the owner of some of the hospitals. The funding of hospitals in general is organized by the German DRG system. The goal of this system is, as you might possibly know, that every hospital is paid on the basis of a diagnosis. There is no more payment for patients lying in beds as it was in the old days, where you had a payment based on that the patient is in the hospital. Things went wrong then in those days, and patients were kept in the bed over weekends, even if they could send home on Fridays. So the outcome of the German DRG system in some short key data was that the length of stay was really decreased, and that quality management systems have been improved in those days. So in short, the German DRG system was born out of the Australian DRG system, even with a very, very big difference, because in Australia, university hospitals were not reimbursed by DRG over long years. So in Germany, the goal was that every hospital, even university hospitals, were put under the DRG system. So every diagnosis is translated in case mix scores, you know that perhaps, and some special reimbursements which are called ZE, which means additional payment, or NUB, new therapeutic or diagnostic methods, is added. So at the end of the day, you have diagnoses, a primary, a secondary diagnosis. You have to document certain procedures, reasons for discharge, some other measures. Then everything goes through a computer system, a standard grouper. Then the case mix scores were calculated out of this. You have certain other influencing reimbursement points like length of stay. You have base prices in the federal states of Germany. They can be different from federal state to federal state. You have the additional reimbursement, and that all counts for your revenue. Those additional reimbursements are in the majority medicinal products like medicines, like antibodies, antifungals, cytotoxics, some small molecules, growth factors, ATMP. You have some blood-derived products in this list, hardware, operations, diagnostics, everything can be in this list. And in most cases, those additional reimbursement items are of relevance only in university hospitals, because there you have the majority of those cases who are not fully reimbursable, one has to say, by DRG system. So how is the DRG reimbursement calculated? And this also shows automatically how hospitals can optimize their processes to get the optimal reimbursement. So the first point is the number of cases of patients, and this is in those days now very influenced by family doctors, because they are responsible for hospital admission. And so for the first time there has been created some connection between family doctors and hospitals. In the old days, hospitals could just be some kind of arrogant, so they don't have to care about those family doctors or those doctors in the retail or ambulatory care settings. So but now they are really influenced by them, because they can decide to which hospital they send their patients. So you have to have a good connection to your family doctors. Next step is then the case mix index and the additional reimbursement. And this is really influenced by the quality of documentation. So you have this in your hands in the hospital, and this is very, very important to know. And also hospital pharmacy has a very important role in this system, because you know, in Germany, or you might know that in Germany we still have the ward stock system. So you will only get an additional reimbursement of a special, very, very expensive medicine, for example, if you have a good documentation. And you have this good documentation if hospital pharmacy already documents those very, very expensive drugs on the patient's name. Then you have a perfect documentation, and then you can be quite sure that you get this reimbursement. If you have a worse documentation or bad documentation, then you will really lose money in this field. And the last point is the so-called base price of one DRG, and this is not influenced by the hospital. The level is a federal state, and yeah, this is really the problem. So we have a very big problem with those costs at university hospital which are really extreme. So, for example, if you have a liver transplantation, then you might have some DRGs in this, but and you know what you can earn with this, but you have a patient population in this DRG, the liver transplant patients, where you also will see some patients which because of complications or who because of complications will stay in your hospital for some kind of a year or longer, even longer. We already had a patient over here who stayed for 2 years before he died. And this is a special situation with university hospitals. And those are always the new and innovative drugs and therapeutics technologies, very expensive drugs. And the problem with those reimbursement is that if you have a normal DRG case like appendicitis, so to say, then you will have a reimbursement which will show you the costs of an average case. And so you will get an average reimbursement. This is calculated. You have something like a Gauss curve over there. But with those very severe cases in, let's say, a high risk or liver transplant, as I already told you as an example, a high risk DRG case, you don't have a Gauss curve. It starts like a Gauss curve, and you will have also an average reimbursement over there, but because there is no Gauss curve on the right side of the average, you can have bad luck and have patients over there, and then you run into a debt. So this is really a problem with so-called upper extremity costs. And this is really a university hospital problem of reimbursement. And most university hospitals really have big problems in those days now to get reimbursed in a proper way. Many of them are run into debt in the last years. So what about hospital pharmacy in this environment of in this legal environment in Germany? So the first point and very important point is that there is no must for a hospital to run a hospital pharmacy. Also retail pharmacies or other hospital pharmacies can supply drugs to a hospital without a hospital pharmacy. A retail pharmacy, by the way, is always owned by a pharmacist. We don't have any chains in Germany. It's forbidden. And on the other hand, a hospital pharmacy is always a part of a hospital. So hospital pharmacies and retail pharmacies are allowed to supply drugs to multiple hospitals without hospital pharmacy by contract. In some federal states of Germany, there is a must to employ a clinical pharmacist, even if there is no hospital pharmacy in place. This is some kind of the future we see, and I will come back to this later in my presentation when we come to the future of hospital pharmacy. So the situation over here in Germany is that we have some kind of 1,900 hospitals and 350, those data I show you here are a little bit older. About 350 hospitals have a hospital pharmacy in their organization. And you see that more than 1,500 hospitals don't have any hospital pharmacy in their organization. On the other hand, we see that those are mostly very small hospitals, because more than 80% of the hospital beds are supplied from real hospital pharmacies, and only or less than 20% are supplied by specialized retail pharmacies. So we have a high number of patients which are supplied over a hospital pharmacy. So that was a little bit about the political or organizational situation of hospitals in Germany. So how will you become a pharmacist in Germany? First of all, you have to go to a university and study pharmaceutical science or pharmacy at the School of Pharmacy. The first 2 years are organized with basic studies like organic, inorganic chemistry, basics of pharmaceutical biology and human biology, basics of physics, physical chemistry, dosage forms, pharmaceutical analytics. And you also have to do 8 weeks in pharmacy practice. Most of the students do this in a retail pharmacy, but also some in a hospital pharmacy, or even in the School of Pharmacy when they do some kind of a small research program. So after those 2 years, you have to do a first state exam. And this is organized by a body who also organizes the state exams for the medical professions. So this is multiple choice, and you have 4 different subjects like chemistry, biology, pharmacology, and physics. After the first state exam, you go to your main studies. Subjects over there are pharmaceutical and medicinal chemistry, pharmaceutical analytics, pharmaceutical technology and biopharmacy, pharmacology and toxicology, and then clinical pharmacy. When you finish that, you do your second state exam, and after the second state exam begins a 1-year internship, and you can do 6 months in retail pharmacy. It is obligatory to do 6 months in a retail pharmacy, and you can do other 6 months in hospital pharmacy or in regulatory offices or somewhere else. And after that, you will have your third state exam, which you have to do at the Chamber of Pharmacists. And after that, you become a licensed pharmacist. So the organization regarding clinical pharmacy, which is also one of the subjects in the second state examination, is done differently in Germany. It really depends on the School of Pharmacy. In some schools of pharmacy, they already have some kind of professorship for clinical pharmacy. In others, the professor of a certain other subject, like pharmaceutical chemistry or pharmacology, cares for the clinical pharmacy lectures. In Heidelberg, we have a special situation. In our School of Pharmacy, there is a cooperation unit between the Heidelberg University Hospital with the pharmacy department, the medical faculty, and the Institute of Molecular Biotechnology and Pharmacy. And we as pharmacists and the clinical pharmacology unit from the University of Heidelberg, we founded a cooperation unit, Clinical Pharmacy. And they are responsible for research and teaching of clinical pharmacy. And so we have the Faculty of Science, where the Institute of Molecular Biotechnology and Pharmacy is located, and the Faculty of Medicines, where the clinical pharmacology is located, and the pharmacy department at the Heidelberg University Hospital, which are working together to run this cooperation unit, Clinical Pharmacy. And I have to say that I think that this is really a success story for our students, because they, from the beginning of the main studies, they will have the possibility to get a teaching with real patient data, and they can visit wards and so on and so on. So clinical pharmacy is very good at University of Heidelberg. How is the situation in Europe? Some kind of different in some countries, but it differs really from country to country. You have bachelor-master systems over here. You also have in other countries a curriculum with state exams. In many countries, you have an internship after the university curriculum. In France, you already begin your specialization at the university. So already during your studies, you have to decide if you want to end up as a hospital pharmacist or industry pharmacist or retail pharmacist. So the curricula differs from country to country, and compared to Germany, the quantity of chemistry versus pharmacology, clinical pharmacy is different in other countries. What about further training and specialization, so post-university specialization? In Germany, you have a code of conduct given by medical and pharmaceutical associations, and they want every pharmacist and every physician to work under a lifelong learning condition. So a lifelong learning is obliged. To organize this, you have continuing medicinal or pharmaceutical education organized with credit points. You collect those credit points, present them, and then you get some kind of a certification. And you have to renew your certification from year to year. And yeah, with this certification, you prove that you are always to date with all the information and scientific information in your profession. In the field of the physicians, they really need this to get reimbursed for the care of patients with statutory health insurance. So if they don't do it, they only can care for patients under a private health insurance, and this is only a few patients, a low percentage of patients in Germany. In our field, in the field of hospital pharmacists, more than 60% of all hospital pharmacists are accredited in this continuing pharmacy education system. But only a minority of retail pharmacists participate in this CPE system, unfortunately. This is the lifelong learning system we have to follow. Another one is the specialization system, and I have over here the example of clinical pharmacy specialization. This means that you have to work 3 years in a certified hospital pharmacy. There are also, to my knowledge, only 1 or 2 retail pharmacies which supplies drug to hospitals by contract, who are also certified to run this specialization course for pharmacists. The certification is always tied to a hospital pharmacist as a teacher or tutor, and one person can hold 2 different specialization certificates, but can only use one of them to teach. So in my person, I hold the certification of clinical pharmacy and also of pharmaceutical analytics. But as nobody else has this pharmaceutical analytics specialization in my hospital pharmacy, I'm the one who teaches pharmaceutical analytics and not hospital pharmacy. There is another colleague who is responsible for the teaching of of clinical pharmacy in our hospital pharmacy. You have a curriculum over there which you have to follow, a 3-year curriculum. You have to write some kind of a thesis, a small thesis at the end, and you also have a final exam. And after that, you can call yourself a specialist for clinical pharmacy. Why do we do this? Some kind of just for fun, because there is no legal requirement to be certified as a clinical pharmacist to work in hospital. This is always under discussion, but the Chamber of Pharmacists don't want this because they always have the fear that this could also be a point then for the retail pharmacists, that they have to have a certification, some kind like a family pharmacist or whatever, to run and own a retail pharmacy, and they don't want this. And there is another point to prove that just for fun, you will not have a financial benefit out of this in most situations. So is it accepted then in Germany? And I have to say yes, and we are very proud as hospital pharmacists, because most of the hospital pharmacists try to get the specialization in clinical pharmacy. And much more hospital pharmacists, like almost 80%, try to get it than retail pharmacists trying to get the specialization in retail pharmacy. So we are, as hospital pharmacists, perhaps more keen to participate in continuing professional development programs than other pharmacists are. How is this in Europe? In many countries, the specialization is connected to the universities and not, like in our case in Germany, to the chambers of pharmacists. So in some countries, it's also mandatory to work in hospital pharmacies to have this. So, but in most countries, there is no requirement to work as a hospital pharmacist. So there is only occupational title like pharmacist, and you can work everywhere with this qualification as pharmacist, and in most countries you will not have financial benefit even like we have it. So where do pharmacists work? Most of them in Germany still in retail pharmacy. Many in hospital pharmacy, less in pharmaceutical industry, some of them also in inspecting authorities, in commissions, in health insurance companies, in scientific journal and in science. and also some in those companies who do some teaching or yeah, for other bodies. So this is the situation in Germany, and now I come to the organization of a hospital pharmacy, and it's quite clear for you perhaps that I will take my own hospital pharmacy to show you how it's organized. So this is an aerial picture of our organization. On the left side you see the different clinics and specializations in our case. And in this box located on top of this, you see where the pharmacy department is located. So we can easily go to every certain clinic and counsel over there and do bedside counseling, patient counseling, and so on and so on. So, and I have to say that we are getting a new building with the aseptic production units we run on top of that. So the organogram in our hospital pharmacy is shown over here. We have some different departments and yeah, you see them over here. We have the clinical pharmacy department, logistics department, drug production, research and education, and quality management system. And you see that some of the key units I've translated to English over here. What was really a task in the last decade was to build up a clinical studies department in the field of research and education. And yeah, we are also allowed to produce study drugs and send them all over the world. We have one study center in Australia which has get drugs, study drugs from us in the last year. And so this is a situation in this field. We have this licensed production unit of Heidelberg University Hospital, and we have 4 qualified persons over here in our pharmacy department to run this production unit. So some key data. In Heidelberg University Hospital, we have about 1,900 beds, and we have more than 1,100 beds in other hospitals where we also have the responsibility to supply them with drugs. We have a purchasing volume of approx 160 million euro, and this is medicines, diagnostics, some additional products. We have goods in stock approximately for 10 million euro, which is connected to drug shortages, I have to say, because in some cases we have more drugs over here than we perhaps should have in our stock. We have a staff budget from approx 6.5 million euro. We are involved in more than 200 clinical studies. We have a drug production which is translated from 90,000 cytotoxic reconstitutions, 14,000 TPN solutions, and so on. We produce more than 40,000 capsules and some kind of 88,000 ready-to-administer syringes. As I already told you, we started when I began over here in 1993 with approx 33 staff in the pharmacy department, and now we have more than 140. And Yeah, we are still growing over here. The pharmaceutical logistics is organized like this. Most drugs we purchase directly from pharmaceutical industry. The physicians on the ward, they prescribe for a ward stock in general. They also prescribe for cytotoxic reconstitution, TPN and others. We will pick those drugs, then there is a transport to the ward or other hospitals. Sometimes you have return shipments and so on and so on. We have the small scale production and everything else. So if you see the key data in the logistics, then we have more than 120 million euro, which we sent to different wards, and you see that there is also a percentage we send to external hospitals, which are not university hospitals then. In Germany, we for sure also have the hospital formulary, and you see the decision process of Heidelberg University Hospital over here. We have a Central Drugs and Therapeutics Committee, and they decide about the scope of formulary. And they are only 8 members with voting rights in this central committee. We have some permanent guests over there, but only 8 people have voting rights. And the hospital pharmacist, the clinical pharmacologist, and the speaker of antimicrobial therapy, they are some kind of, we call it born members. So they are in this group because of their position. And then we also have 5 clinicians who are elected by their colleagues to go in this group. So the Central Drugs and Therapeutics Committee almost meets once a month. And then we also have an extended Drugs and Therapeutics Committee, which is much bigger. So every specialty is in this group, and their responsibility is to request for new drugs and therapeutics, to act as specialists for the CDTC, and to implement the decisions on the ward level for other hospitals. The decision process always has 3 priorities. First priority is always effectiveness, shown by clinical studies or long-term outcome data. The second priority is always safety, and safety means safety for the patient, but also for the staff. If you think on cytotoxic reconstitution processes. And the third priority is always pharmacoeconomics, which means budget impact, reimbursement issues, and so on and so on. As I already told you, we have a large drug production in our hospital pharmacy, which is created by those 4 boxes over here. First of all, cytotoxic reconstitution, then clinical studies, TPN, and drug production like aseptic small-scale production, ready-to-administer syringes, and so on and so on. And what you already can see over here, we tried to do some automatization in this field and take robots wherever possible. So why do we do this drug production? So number 1 reason is because the drugs are not available in the market, not in the right dosage, not in the right form, or even not as a drug itself. There might be no production by pharmaceutical industry, think on rare diseases or orphan drugs. There also is a lack for individualized drugs, as you have in cytotoxic reconstitution, TPN dosage for children, and so on and so on. They also might be too expensive, and another reason might be drug shortages. At the end of the day, you always have to think on this point. Some physicians need a drug production only because it's nice to have, and therefore you always have to keep in mind the pharmacy decision, make or buy over here. So let's come to oncology, cytotoxic reconstitution. You also can see here that there is still an increase over the years, and the problem over there is really the pharmacoeconomics for Germany. You can see that with the coming of monoclonal antibodies and those other very new drugs and innovative drugs, there is a really an immense increase of the costs over here, and the big question is, will our health system survive this? And to see this in the future, you also have to see the future of hospital pharmacy. And this is really something which changed in the last years, I have to say, and changed dramatically, because in the old days, we always have to fight to get heard by the politicians and to fight for new staff and so on and so on. And the hospital pharmacy always was seen some kind of as a cost factor and not as a safety factor or whatever. So, but this changed when we had serial murder case where a nurse killed approximately more than 100 patients in 2 different hospitals. He had one goal. He wanted to be recognized as a master of resuscitation, I would say. So he gave some drugs to the patients to stop their heart beating, and so he went there, and he was a guy who was then the guy who resuscitated the patients. At the end of the day, one had to recognize that all quality management systems failed in these cases. There was no effective supervision, no effective detection system, no 4 eyes principle. Hospital pharmacists had not been involved in drug treatment in those hospitals. They only had a ward stock system. There was no unit dose system in place. So certain reasons which made it easy for this guy. The first reaction of the federal state which was affected was that there have to be clinical or hospital pharmacists mandatory on wards to have something like a counseling over there, or even some kind of a control system. For us as a professional organization, this ended up in our goal for the year 2022, and we have to say that we also have to take this for the next years, and the goal is called named closed loop medication management. And everything started with the admission of a patient, then he runs through the hospital, which is the lower circle over there, and everything is done under the headline of drug safety with focus on safe drug treatment. And you see that there are roles for the physicians, for the ward pharmacists, for hospital pharmacists, and for the nurses. And the systems, ambulatory care and hospital care, for the first times in Germany are some kind of connected. How do we do it, or want to do it in our in Heidelberg University Hospital? And I write how we want to do it, because currently we only have 2 surgical specialties where we really do this circling. we have to say in those days now, without a proper IT system around and electronic patient chart and so on. But we are on the way, and those two specialties like heart surgery and vascular surgery are already not controlled, but some kind of connected to a ward pharmacy system. And you see the process in the upper line, and all the blue boxes show you where the hospital pharmacist, the ward pharmacist, is responsible, and the red circles show you what the physician has to do in this system. And we have to say that this is really a system which is called something like gold standard over here. And you also see that this is connected to this cycle of our the closed loop medication management system of our association, because it's always like patient comes from primary care and is admitted to hospital and then given back to primary care again. And so it's a circling system, so to say. So if I see the future, then for me the future has one big problem, and this is that it will be very, very difficult to get qualified staff for hospitals. And this means doctors, nurses, in the pharmacy department also technicians, and so on and so on. So this is the threat for the future. As hospital pharmacists, we know that we can overtake some workload at bedside with inventing some processes like unit dose or whatever, and also counseling and also documentation and things like that. But even for hospital pharmacy, we have to keep in mind that we have to do automatization and take robots wherever possible. And we also need, even for the ward-based or bedside pharmacy, we have to have a very good IT system in place in our hospital. So for me in the future, patient safety is more under control of the hospital pharmacist. And I'm quite sure that for hospital pharmacy, the future will be bright. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Bueno, terminó la presentación y tenemos al profesor, así que si quieren ir haciendo consultas, vamos a charlar un poquito con él y agradecerle. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We are very, very grateful from our association for your presentation. It was excellent. I want to be German just right now.
Perhaps you don't want it to, if you live here. No, it's not too bad.
No, excellent, excellent. We are actually admired. Thank you very much from our association, AFAM. We hope that in a future you can visit us, not by Zoom, but in person with your family. Really, it's a pleasure to our association to receive you in the future. Many years ago, I've been in Heidelberg. It's a beautiful, beautiful city, just married. And I went there with my husband, which is also pharmacist.
Yeah.
And we were surprised by the beauty of the city and the museum and the university. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a nice place to be over here, and you know, it's also one of the oldest universities in Europe and in Germany at all. And so, yeah, it's a good place to be, and also a good place to grow up children, and because it's very international over here. You know, we have a high number of students coming from everywhere in the world, and we also have lots of tourists over here, and that's always good to have different persons around. So you really, yeah, it's a good place, I have to say. I'm not born over here. I come from the northern part of Germany, but it was a very good move to go to Heidelberg.
Excellent place, and I admire your work. Really, we are surprised because the level of the presentation is excellent. Please be patient with our manage of English, because it's a little rusty.
Mm-hmm.
And
I already see some questions over here in the chat.
Yes.
So the one is, how does the relationship between School of Pharmacy and professionals work? Do the pharmacy students in the last years attend classes in any hospital? No, it's not just regulatory or officially. So in many schools of pharmacies, hospital pharmacists are involved in the teaching of clinical pharmacy. And that's the first approach of the students to hospital pharmacy. But the university itself has nothing to do with the profession, unfortunately. So they are really some kind, we always call it, they are in their ivory tower, and yeah, they are far away from the profession in most cases. So students really admire that they hear something from the practical side of the profession when we as hospital pharmacists teach them clinical pharmacy over there. But with their second state exam, they really stop everything related to the university, because then they go to the internship, and the last state exam is always some kind of a examination in front of other pharmacists. So at the Chamber of Pharmacy in those those federal states of Germany. So the connection between school and pharmacy and the profession as a pharmacist is some kind of poor in many cases. When I was a student, I didn't know that there is a hospital pharmacy. I was absolutely not aware of that. So I had no idea what to do when I loved to study pharmacy because it's a lot of chemistry, but like science. But yeah,
there was a patient waiting for those chemistries, but we don't know in the university. I understand. Can I translate for people?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Excuse me. Me parece que sobre la pregunta que había en el chat, es como que él dice que hay una realidad paralela entre lo que uno piensa que es una torre de marfil para los estudiantes que realmente piensan en la química o en la formación profesional desde otro ángulo, y no como que es una realidad. Por eso cuando ellos van al hospital universitario es como que realmente conocen para quién uno está estudiando y para quién uno va a trabajar. En verdad es como que no
está bueno eso, ¿no es cierto? Es como el hospital de clínicas acá, sería el hospital universitario. Creo que esa es la idea. No sé si alguien quería algo más agregar de lo que el doctor habló. O si alguien quiere hacerle una pregunta, podemos habilitar el micrófono también, porque su inglés es bastante más fácil de entender que el de un nativo, no sé. Bueno, acá hay otra. There's another question for you, Torsten. If you want.
Yes, there's this one. Are there fellowships available for foreign pharmacy graduates? Yes.
They want to go there.
Yeah, we already had fellows from Spain, from France, from Portugal, but unfortunately, they have to be financed by the system over there in their country. So I cannot pay for those fellows. Unfortunately, this is not in our system. Even our students, if they German students, if they do their internship at our hospital pharmacies, they will get some kind of, I guess it's around 800 euro per month. If you know how high the rents in Heidelberg are, which is one of the top level rents in Germany, then you can be quite clear that it's a hard task to live over here for 800 euros, which I'm allowed to pay. So it's possible, and we always had this before the Corona pandemic, and we also had some kind of contract with a US School of Pharmacy to have some internships over here for them, but also without payment. It's always without payment, unfortunately, for foreign countries. That's I cannot offer anything.
We understand. We
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
It's a pity because
it's a pity. I know because I know that's very difficult for other countries, and even for Argentina, it's far away, I have to say. The travel alone will cost a fortune to come to Germany, and then you will get no money. This is too bad, but that's the status quo in those days now.
It's a cyclic. Perhaps in a few years we can afford it. In the meantime, perhaps you can come and visit us.
Hopefully, it would be a pleasure. I've never been in South America. The only country I've been over there was Curacao, which is not really South America, because one of my sons worked over there at an institute over there. There's another one. In general, do patients have private health insurance or statutory health insurance, I would say? Most patients in Germany have a statutory health insurance. This is our main system. And I have to say that I would say our health system is still one of the best in the world, but because we can finance it up to now. And I'm interested if it will explode in the next years because of drugs like Zolgensma or CAR T cells or other ATMP, which cost 2 million or something per patient per dose. And our system is not very solidaric, I have to say. Because we have those private health insurance, and you can only go in a private health insurance if you earn lots of money. So and then you pay less than others in statutory health insurance. So this is not fair, I would say. But I guess it's quite more than 80% of people who are in statutory health insurance, and less than 20 who have the opportunity to go in private health insurance systems.
Okay. The price of medication
is always the same in both systems.
Both systems, because
it's always the same.
Industry is who invests and want to recover that money. It's understood.
Yeah, but we have fixed prices over here in Germany. You know, you have for drugs, you have fixed prices. Only hospitals, only hospitals.
Okay.
Only hospital pharmacies can bargain prices directly with pharmaceutical industry. If you go to a retail pharmacy to get your prescription filled, it's always a fixed price. So even if you're private insured or statutory health insurance or whatever, it's always the same price. Only we at hospital pharmacies are allowed to bargain prices with Roche or with all those pharmaceutical industry guys. And therefore, we are always in some kind of purchase corporations. So we at University Hospital of Heidelberg, we are together with 8 or 9 other university hospitals, and we purchase the drugs together for the same price, and we bargain.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there is another questions. They're all good comments for you, for your presentation. We are so grateful, really. And do you want to? Salud.
First time we see, we have so much emails to...
Habilita el micrófono. Sí.
Yeah.
Sorry, I would like to speak in English, but my English is not good.
It's
better
so
than my Spanish, I have to say, because there is no Spanish in my case. So sorry, I have to say sorry, not you.
But your English is very easy for us to understand.
Hopefully, yeah.
And she was the one that made the connections. Really.
Yep.
Yeah. We thank you. For us, it was a pleasure. Really, we are so grateful for your presentation, for your presence in the Zoom. And well, ¿algo más que alguno le quiera preguntar al doctor?
No, que lo esperamos en Buenos Aires para practicar español.
We will invite you to Buenos Aires because it's a wonderful city. Buenos Aires, it's like an European city. And
a good friend of mine was there, and he is really some kind of a fan from Buenos Aires. So
it's like Madrid in part and Paris. I went there many years ago, and I can say that we have really nice parts, very modern, and not as Berlin, because I don't know Berlin, but they say it's a wonderful city. And I like Heidelberg.
We always say it's a strange city because it's our capital, and it's really I think this is some kind of love and hate always with capitals. In Germany, it is like, it's really, you have culture over there like hell, really, museums, galleries, things like that. It's so great. But on the other hand, they are not able to build an airport and things like that. So it's crazy sometimes.
It's strange. I would like to know Berlin, because I haven't been there and always say it's wonderful. But my heart is in Heidelberg.
Perfect.
we thank you very much from AFAM, our association. I know that you belong to ADCA, and ADCA is in the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists, or
Yes,
belongs?
yes.
I was looking at the page. It's impressive.
Yeah,
really.
Unfortunately, it's only in German. Yeah, we are working on this, and on our homepage. You know, we are only a small association. I've told you that we only have 350 pharmacies, hospital pharmacies over here, and yesterday I was said that it's now we have 2,600 members, 2,600 hospital pharmacies, and yeah, for that it's a task to really run a homepage and have it in English also, and so on and so on. Yes, but we are I think from the beginning, a member association of the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists. And yeah, and that's a good thing, yeah.
Well, I will translate little for the people.
Yeah, for sure.
El doctor nos habla de la Asociación Europea de Farmacias Hospitalarias, que uno puede visitar la página y es realmente impresionante. Muchos países pertenecen, y realmente cómo está organizada, todas las tareas que emprenden los farmacéuticos. Y bueno, él dice que nosotros lo invitamos a conocer Buenos Aires. Heidelberg es una ciudad universitaria, es muy linda, está entre montañas, y dice que escuchó muy buenas cosas de nuestra ciudad, que Berlín es una ciudad extraña y que bueno, no tiene oportunidad para darnos becas a nosotros, que sabe que tenemos que pagar en euros y que nos es dificultoso, pero que bueno, a lo mejor nos visita y nos brinda otra linda conferencia. No sé si alguien más quiere hacer una pregunta, o lo liberamos al doctor por los horarios que ellos manejan allá. Torsten, again, we are grateful. It was a pleasure to meet you, for me, for Antonella, for the association. We hope that in the future you can come to Buenos Aires. We'll see the manner to invite you and let you see Buenos Aires and bring another presentation.
For sure. Okay.
Well, the chat is full of good things for your presentation and for you. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. Okay.
And we know that you have to, what time is in Heidelberg?
It's 8:15 in the
Okay.
evening.
Time to have dinner.
Yeah, for
To
sure.
go home.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, it was a pleasure. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. And if any questions, you know my email address, just don't hesitate.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah? Okay.
We'll get the email. Thank you very much, Torsten. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Bueno, el doctor nos explicaba que allá eran las 8 de la noche, 8 y pico de la noche, y que deja su mail para todas las preguntas sobre su presentación, y que nos va a dar otra presentación acá en Buenos Aires. Buenas tardes a todos. Desde AFAM, la última charla internacional queda grabada en el canal YouTube. Saludos.